wanted to start the discussion of Sightseers with the question of morality, broadly.
What? In what respect?
Well, it's something that cropped up in Kill List, and I want to go back to that. And there's a quote from that film, which is that they're bad people that deserve what they're getting.
Yeah, yeah.
And I wanted to talk about that as an entry point into Sightseers.
Yeah. Well, you know, I mean, I think there's a theme that runs through the movies that I'm interested in, which is this kind of personal morality, where they, you know, down Terrace is the same. They've created their own moral universe, and Kill List is the same. Obviously, they're operating outside of the law, you know, and certainly Sightseers, they make it up as they go along. Pretty much, it's not as certain as Kill List. But I mean, there's stuff, you know, that quote, the bad people, they should suffer, is kind of part of a game which ends up with the librarian character getting his head smashed in, and that's the kind of thing of going, well, if you take kind of vigilante justice to its extreme, or you take that kind of thinking, which is, you know, the knee-jerk kind of tabloid newspaper reaction of like, you know, a child has been killed, if I get hold of one of those guys, I'd smash his face in, you know, well, there we go, this is what happens. And it's not justice you get out of these things, but you become the thing that's the problem, you know. And I think that was kind of where that was at. I mean, you know, in terms of Sightseers, it's a kind of game that they play where he has a kind of moral kind of code, but it's very hazy, you know, and will be reset to suit him whenever, which I kind of think is basically his own way of preserving his own integrity in terms of like not feeling guilty about stuff. She's a bit more of an open book, you know, she does whatever, and we were thinking that, you know, if he hadn't been murdering people and he'd been interested in something else like hang gliding or something, she'd have got into that instead. You know, she's just totally, you know, she's kind of trying to follow what he's doing, you know, it doesn't really matter, and then just because it's murder is something she gets behind, but it's not, you know, she's open.
His decisions seem to come out of kind of frustration, though. But when she's following him, it seems like more of a, I don't even want to say naive, I think it's more someone who wants to try new things.
Yeah.
And that comes out pretty explicitly when she's talking about not wanting to go back to the box of her life. And maybe tasting new things is literal when she's tasting the blood. So I'm wondering how those two characters and how they kind of adapt to their scenarios differ.
Well, the thinking was that she was kind of a purer, kind of more open and chaotic character who could just, you know, she was a force of nature, where he was a bit more anal and tried to control it. But it was this. The basic idea was that it's a guy who has a woman that he thinks is malleable, but it turns out she's actually better at it than he is, and she's the natural and surpasses him. And it definitely, you know, it happens in the movie where he just stops killing people, and then she carries on, you know, until he becomes kind of the last victim. And
he kind of stops when he develops a kind of homosocial experience where he has like a friend that's a man that's also a business partner potentially that he can share that with, and what is the gender dynamics that are going on?
Well, that's a kind of it's another betrayal by him, in the same way that with the kissing of the bride to be and the you know, and that but it's already been set up that the logic of it is the, you know, has he touched you logic of why the Rambler must die. So she's only following his example to its logical conclusion, but Chris is a bit more, you know, he's already shown that he's pretty hypocritical when it comes to his rules, you know, so she shouldn't really be following it all the way to the end, but he set the situation up, and he's basically a victim of it.
And his hypocrisy is kind of driven by class too, because what bothers him at first seems like it's a general thing about littering, but then it seems in the second one that it's more of an envy for a different class and an irritation from, at least in my mind, gloating or like showing off one's...
Yeah, but also crushing his dream, you know, as random as his dream is, you know, he's never going to write the book, it's just bullshit, you know, he's spinning her a line and he's kidding himself. I mean, I've seen it, so, you know, I used to be a big joke where we'd talk to people and they're going, yeah, I'm going to take a year off and write my book, and Ames and I've been writing for like 10 fucking years and getting nowhere, and he's going, well, you know, good luck with that, you know. So that I think that's why and also the guy in the you know, Ian is a massive liar anyway, because he's, you know, everyone's so quick to assume he's killed himself because of this financial problem that he's got. So he's putting forward this big thing of like, I'm really, really rich and successful. I've got my books, but it's like that's all a front as well.
And I also picked up on maybe some smaller things. In the case of Ian, there's the caravan that's free of clutter, and clutter being personal possessions is what they qualify as clutter. But also just the box that the one man has with his sandwich in it, how it's perfectly compartmentalized with like what seems to be healthy food versus, say, the crisps that they're feeding the dog.
Yeah.
It seemed like there was an element maybe of a different social sphere.
Oh yeah, totally. I mean, but it's a lot of it's out of jealousy, really, you know. But it's that thing of, I don't know, I mean, there's a lot of wish fulfillment in it that you wish you could take. I find that you're kind of frustrated in life, and all those people who litter or drunk people who are abusing people on the train, you never do anything. One never does anything about it, and this guy does, but he doesn't. You know, he hasn't really thought it through particularly, and it's that thing of, well, you know, that there's a bit of kind of quasi social commentary in this stuff, but it really is just an excuse to vent his kind of rather random anger, whoever is kind of available. But he kind of dresses it up as it might be kind of social commentary, but I don't know. I don't think it probably is, you know.
Is that why there's kind of like a slow motion in the use of music for those moments where you do kind of get to live out those, or one gets to live out those?
Yeah, I think, I mean, that stuff was about is making those moments as vivid as possible, and the use of slow-mo in general in cinema, I think, for me, is this idea of is that time does move at different paces depending on how you feel, and it's trying to get to that real, even though it's a kind of it's an abstract thing to be into slow-mo, kind of, but it also in a weird way feels more realistic to me a bit. And also I wanted to make those kind of murders feel really hyper real, so you start to get the kind of, you get inside of Chris's and then Tina's heads as you experience this kind of incredible moment, and then it goes back to the socio-realist kind of style which the rest of the movie's in.
And there's also the use of a very impressive use of parallel editing in those moments. And is that to maybe signify the ripple effect of what these actions do, or? Yeah,
well, it's joining them. It's almost a kind of magical joining of these things. I mean, there's the first one where it happens where Tina's like watching the kind of shaman doing their thing, and then she's with them, and then it's cross cut between her dancing and Chris thinking, and it's almost like she projects herself there, and then he can see her, but did he imagine her there, or did she imagine it? And it's like them almost becoming like kind of joined together as one psyche, was the kind of thinking about it behind it. And then later you've got that thing of the murder of it was part of that same sequence, actually, kind of the murder of Ian, and that the thinking behind that was, it was like all these little moments were joining together in almost a kind of they were the different parts of a kind of a spell that started to bind. So that this idea of, is it happening? Is Tina dreaming it, or is she psychically kind of reacting to it? But they've been joined at this moment beforehand, and now they're twinned together.